ever wondered what people were thinking when they first started smoking cigarettes back in the early 1900s? The health concerns weren't available back then. The research wasn't done. So no one knew that smoking could have serious health consequences as we know today. Everybody smoked. The mom smoked. The kids smoked. The grandparents smoked. We even gave cigarettes to wounded soldiers when they came into the hospitals through the different wars in the earlier 1900s. In 1906, there was no regulations on smoking cigarettes, on the marketing, on the sales, on anything that surrounded cigarettes or tobacco products in general. The FDA had no idea that the smoking of cigarettes could cause serious health issues. And in 1914, the FDA was even advised people to include smoking cigarettes and tobacco products into the definition of a drug, which the definition of a drug is to cure, mitigate, or prevent a disease. Okay, so we see that the idea of cigarettes and tobacco products was totally backwards to what it is today. And actually, in 1953, Fairfax cigarettes were sold as a preventative measure for respiratory diseases. And in 1959, Tim reducing aid cigarettes were marketed as to help in weight loss. That's crazy. We would never sell cigarettes for weight loss or to prevent any kind of diseases, especially respiratory diseases. Thankfully, in the 1960s, the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, proposed many different rules to strictly regulate, quote, the imagery and copy of cigarette ads to prohibit explicit or implicit health claims. So we started to see in the 1960s that the research of cigarettes and tobacco products was being done to show that there were health concerns for inhaling and smoking nicotine and cigarettes. So in the 1960s, we started seeing a lot of these different policies and people advocating for the reduction of smoking cigarettes and tobacco products. In 1976, the Toxic Substance Control Act was passed, and it regulated the chemicals and substances that were used in tobacco products, which, quote, which should provoke unreasonable risks of injuries to the health or the environment. So we even see back in the 1960s, that we were looking towards also not only the person smoking, but the environment that the person was smoking in. This includes secondhand smoke that bypassers can smoke or can breathe in when other people are smoking, which has serious health consequences in and of itself. So we started seeing the research being done to prove the point that smoking cigarettes and using tobacco products was a negative thing. And so in the 1980s was the beginning of many steps towards banning smoking in public places. In 1983, the Federal Trade Commission said that the testing procedures had significantly underestimated the level of tar, nicotine, and carbon monoxide that smokers' bodies receive when they are smoking. So, by 1985, the FTC required cigarettes and of science to be removed from all packaging and ads. So it was not considered a science, a health benefit, or anything of that sort by the 1980s. Let me just get here. So between the 1980s and now, as we see this change of thought process about cigarettes and tobacco products, in 1987, the Public Law 100-202, it banned smoking on domestic airline flights that were only 2 hours or less. So that's a step in the right direction. And in 1989, Public Law 101-164 banned smoking on domestic airline flights that were 6 hours or less. So we see a little increase in the restrictions that we have of smoking that can affect other people. And in 1994, the Pro-Child Act was passed, and this law banned all smoking in federally funded children's services. So we are starting in the 1990s to protect children from receiving that secondhand smoke that is so detrimental to one's health. From then, many, many laws have been passed to protect the environment, to protect people from the smoking hazards of nicotine, of tar, and even of secondhand smoke. And since then, we have seen many changes in state laws, in local laws, in public policy, and we are advocating so heavily towards increasing those restrictions with tobacco products, with smoking, and with this new thing that's called e-cigarettes.